Welcome back, I'm Chase, and this is All Things Rim. Today, we are talking about why you should buy a Chinese vintage homage over, perhaps, an original. Now this video is going to ruffle some feathers, but hopefully you guys understand exactly what I'm talking about. Now let's just get right into it. First, before we dive into this any further, let's state the obvious so you guys in the comment section don't blow it up with hate. It's hard to beat the original. That's not what I'm here to do. Brands like Rolex, Omega, and Blancpain, the value is not only behind the product, it's also in the name itself. Now, with that being said, like vintage watches, the value can sometimes greatly increase due to its rarity, a defect maybe, or even just its overall condition. But the value can also dramatically decrease due to possible unintentional damage. Now, when I say unintentional damage, I don't mean the beautiful custard patina that grows in the loom pits over time. That's not what I'm talking about. Now, let me explain why perhaps you should choose a vintage homage over the original. Now, my father-in-law told me when I looked at his beat-up Rolex Yachtmaster, he said watches are meant to be worn. And I really agree with that. Watches are meant to be worn. They're meant to be enjoyed, used, and even shown off to your friends, family, strangers on the street, or possibly just another enthusiast. They're meant to soak up the sun and in turn illuminate the time in the darkness. Not sit in the darkness in a safe in the back of your closet, cold and alone. But there is an argument for value. Imagine the day you pick up a 1954 Rolex Submariner, the true first of its kind. You've saved, you've searched, you've collected, and now you have it on your wrist. Now the thrill of having the timepiece of just pure history on your wrist is extremely thrilling. The scratches, the patina, the nicks, the dings, all of which that were before you have become your story. And from this moment on, you will add to its story. Now imagine just for a moment, there's a slight drizzle outside. You put on your jacket, you slide the cuff over your watch because you don't want it to get wet, and you take the first step down a series of concrete steps, maybe just outside a movie theater. Then you slip. Your hand unintentionally reaches back to catch your fall because we've all done that. Now this, in turn, is slamming your wrist into the edge of a staircase, damaging the glass of your watch, the dial, and the delicate movement from 1954 that once was a workhorse but now is really just a decrepit, aged old man. Now clearly you would say, Chase, no one is going to wear this vintage watch, this first edition 1954 Rolex Submariner on their wrist out to a movie. Well, maybe they would. You don't know. But it's still unintentional damage. The everyday hiccups in our life that cause injury and damage, well, it's not intentional. It's just life, right? It's similar to, let's just say, leaving a first edition Spider-Man comic valued at $400,000 displayed in a glass case, and a hurricane sweeps through and destroys not only your home, but something valued at far beyond your home. And it's not just a financial, but it's also the emotional connections with the things that we collect that have now been taken from us. Now here's where one can argue that companies will do reissues of their watches. Now Panerai is an example of a company that has done a homage to the original with updated sapphire instead of acrylic, a more robust movement, all the stylings of the original with none of the hassles that come with that vintage watch. But like most things in this world, they can be out of reach, even with the original brand, the reissue, and everything else. A $10,000 reissue could be just as out of reach for someone as a $400,000 comic. So this is where I would argue for the Chinese Homage. Now, similar style, similar aesthetics, but without the name. Chinese instead of Swiss, and without the hefty price tag. Now, what I'm about to say may be blasphemous to some, but comparing Chinese to Swiss, you're right, it's not in the same category. But let me explain to you in different terms that perhaps you can understand. Now, some of us love sports cars. We love exotic cars, high-end Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Maseratis, true marvels of engineering, just like a watch. But so is the new Chevy Corvette C8. Mid-engine, sweeping lines, aggressive features, and the styling of its European counterparts. But I could have 4 for the cost of 1 Ferrari. So with that in mind, let's hop back to the Chinese homage of these vintage originals. Now, there's no reason why things should be as expensive as they are behind these high-end brands, because the Chinese are offering similar things. Sapphire crystal, for instance, has become a standard, keeping a watch looking newer, longer. Materials like ceramic for the bezels, and even sapphire bezel inserts to toughen the exterior of these watches to make them nearly unbreakable. The case is made of the same modern alloys. The finish is, to a higher degree, maybe not as high as a $10,000 watch, but extremely high-end for the price tag that I'm about to tell you. Now, the science of water pressures make most of these watches at least 200 meters of water resistance, and all of this for around $100. Now, I'm not arguing vintage watches. Vintage watches are amazing. If I could own a 1954 vintage Rolex, I absolutely would. And would I wear it on my wrist? Absolutely not. Now, vintage watches are amazing. They've absolutely made history. They've paved the path forward for the watches that we have today. Tourbillons, silicone hairsprings, hybrids, these watches make the watches of the 50s and 60s look like the Model T to a Tesla. Now, these Chinese watches that I'm talking about, these homages, a couple that I've showed you here today, they nod their head and they tip their hat to the original, but offer the ability of the ordinary and everyday person to put one on their wrist. They become more obtainable than just for the ultra wealthy. Now, what do you guys think about what I said? Love it or hate it? Leave a comment down below. I really like to hear what you guys have to say. Now, if you like videos and videos like this, hit that subscribe button down below. I have a lot of videos coming up in the future. Make sure you guys are leaving a comment of the content you guys would like to see on this channel, and hit that notification bell, because like I said, I'm trying to release a video every 3 days, and I have a lot of videos coming up in the next couple months, and I'll see you in the next one.